Hi everyone, and welcome to Bluebeam Revu. My name is Ari, and I'm a Bluebeam certified instructor with digital drafting systems. Today, I'm going to be showcasing some of the functions associated with dynamic fills. Before we look at dynamic fills themselves, let's go to our Review dropdown and click on Preferences. Then we go under Tools and Measure, and here are our dynamic fill options. And when we set these options here, they're going to be set for all future dynamic fills, so they're pretty permanent. We're going to look at our dynamic fill input and make sure that it's set to its highest number, 400. If we set it lower, the fill would be less sensitive to certain vector lines. So while it takes a little bit more processing power, it's better to have a higher DPI. We could momentarily hide markups if we wanted to. That would allow us to make our fill and not have other markups in the way or distracting us. In this case, I've unchecked this because I'd like to see the markups around me and be aware of my fill and I don't want it to encroach onto other markups. Our fill size can be set according to the size of our room, so smaller rooms could use a smaller fill size so you don't accidentally fill outside of the room too quickly. The fill speed can also be set accordingly to allow for the fill to stay within its lines or to fill in large areas quickly. The fill color and boundary color are set to green and blue by default, and we're going to leave them just like that. And our boundary size, I've set it to the smallest amount because a thinner line will be a little bit easier to use as a boundary. The edge sensitivity is set to low for me right now, and we're going to leave it like that, and I'm going to show you guys what happens when we change it to high. For now, let's click OK. And now let's go to our Tools dropdown, Measure, and Dynamic Fill. The toolbar is loading for Dynamic Fill. Once the icons aren't grayed out, we're ready to use it. So we have two components to worry about, the boundary itself and the fill. Let's make our boundary first. We're going to make our fill near Office 205, and let's set our boundary to be on the inner part of the wall right here. And you'll notice that I've actually disabled, I've disabled my line weights so that I can see exactly where my fill is going to go. There we go. And now I'm going to click the enter button. My boundary is ready. And the boundary does not have to be exact. So this boundary is good enough and we can adjust it a little bit later. Now I'm going to go into my fill tool. And before I do, let's look at our properties once again. So here we can see that all of the same properties are set according to our preferences, and if we modify them here, they're only going to be temporary and only going to be applied to the current fill. So it's quite useful to set yourself up for success by changing your preferences, and then to modify your settings as you go along to make sure that you're getting the right fill. We'll leave our settings as they are, and now we've clicked on fill, and we can choose a number of measurements to be associated with the fill. For example, we can create spaces, shapes, areas, polylengths, perimeters, and volumes. In this case, we're going to be making an area measurement and a volume at the same time, and you could do any number of combinations that you'd like. We can click on the drop-down arrows next to them, and let's make sure that we're using one of our volumes that we've saved in our toolbar. In this case, this concrete one is quite nice, and under area, this concrete one is also quite nice. And here they both are, right here and here. So we're going to be using them. That way we don't have to worry about applying all of our different settings to it and our formatting styles. All right, now I'm going to show you the magic of the dynamic fill tool. I'm just going to click and hold and not move, and you're going to see how Revu automatically detected these vector lines within the drawing. And so the fill went pretty close to those edges. And you can see here that it worked pretty well with my boundary. Let's see what happens. Now we're going to click apply. Now, you might notice that there's two sets of numbers on top of each other, and this fill does not quite, or this area and this volume doesn't quite look like these areas here. They should have a much lighter and less opaque background. But it turns out that there are actually two markups here. So here I'm going to be using my Shift key to move this directly down. And look at that, we actually have two different markups here. So in this case, just to keep things a little bit simple, we're going to get rid of our volume markup and we'll just leave the area one. Let's click this one and then hold Shift and click on the number, and we can move our number a little bit down so we can keep it away from the existing one. All right, now let's click on it one more time and let's see what grips were created with this fill. Looks like we've only got 4 corner grips, so this one actually worked pretty darn well. Now, what we can do to adjust this, because as we can see, there's a little bit of a gap in between the fill and the line itself, is we can make sure that we go down here and that snap to content is selected. We can also snap to markup if we wanted to, but for now, content involves any lines that are already flattened onto the drawing and hopefully lines that were created with some kind of a CAD software or something along those lines. So with that in mind, I can zoom in, click on my little corner, and then allow it to snap to that corner right here. This way we can adjust our fill just to make it even more accurate. All right, and let's do one more. Excellent. So this one was quite easy. There aren't any curves here that are pretty problematic. Here we've actually got a curve in this fill. So the next fill we're going to be making is going to be demonstrating not only about the high sensitivity, but how we can use that to our advantage. So this fill is great, well done. Now we have a nice little area right here. Let's make another one. Save our work. Oops. Looks like when we do that, the fill tool goes away. So let's click on it one more time. There we go. We're going to be defining another boundary. Let's make this one very similarly to the other one. We'll actually start up here. We'll make it around there. That's pretty good. And we can go into there. Excellent. Let's click Enter. Our boundary is in place. Now we can click on Fill. And I'm going to show you guys what happens when we leave our sensitivity on low. So in this case, I'm just going to be doing an area measurement this time. And let's now click and hold and see what happens. So as you can see, some of the lines within this office aren't as thick as the lines within this one. Bluebeam did not detect those lines. So what we need to do is we actually need to take this fill tool and now we need to modify its settings. So if we go here and we go to our edge sensitivity, let's set that to high. And now let's see what happens. So we'll turn our settings off and let's make our new fill. Click and hold. Let's see what happens. There we go. Our edge sensitivity was high, so it detected not only the room's lines, but it even detected the door lines. So this can be a bit problematic because we could apply this fill and start to delete all the little dots and grips that were created from that fill. But there's an easier way. We're going to go to our little trash bin. We're going to click on Clear Fill. We could also clear the boundaries or clear both boundaries and fills altogether if we wanted to. And let's make this one more time. And this time I'm going to move my cursor into areas that I want to be filled. So I'm going to do it like this, make sure I move it a little bit inside there, and let go. Even though I changed my settings and I moved my cursor correctly, it turns out that these lines right here were not quite detected properly. But thankfully, these were. And so this is pretty close. I believe this is as close as we're going to get to being accurate. So let's click on Apply. And now let's modify this a little bit further. We can see that our grips in the corners are correct. They look pretty good. This grip was detected. That's not necessary at all. We have grips here that were detected, also not really necessary, so let's get rid of those to make our little area even more accurate. And I don't think that we need this one either. Excellent. Now we can start to get rid of a few others. I'm holding Shift while just clicking on these little grips. If I hold Shift on an empty area, I can add another grip, for example. So let's get rid of these two. And it looks like I will have to add one. So I'm going to add a grip right around there. Now I'm just going to let go of Shift, click and hold, and I can now snap it to that area. If I wanted to, I could actually take these grips and make them super accurate by snapping them to the intersections of these windowed areas. So I'm going to move some farther away. Let's just keep snapping to these intersections. This is a great way to do it. There we go. Let's get rid of this one. It doesn't seem necessary. We can move this one right here. This one can be moved just a little bit. And now that is pretty accurate. And just in case, we can make another grip and we can move that grip to this intersection right here. That is pretty well done. And the more the merrier, of course. All right. So now that we have all of our grips ready, it looks like this fill is very accurate. And it looks like we have now made a perfectly made area fill or area tool or square footage within this room. We can take these grips and we can further move them to the corners just to make them even more accurate. So let's move this one. I believe that's its corner. I can tell when the icon goes blue that I found an intersection. And these I've already made sure they're snapping appropriately. So now our square footage is even more accurate. This is the dynamic fill tool, and this is a really great way to make areas and volume measurements and other different kinds of measurements all over your drawing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the dynamic fill tool, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Once again, this is Ari with Digital Drafting Systems, signing off.